Good evening and welcome to Kunsthalle Wien for this artist talk with Rawan, Almukhtar and Kammerloch. I'm Hannah Marynissen. I curated this year's edition of the Kunsthalle Wien Preis. And to the right of me in the middle is a lovely Rawan, and further to my right is Ida. The Kunsthalle Wien Preis might be a format that's familiar to some of you. It's been a collaboration we've had for over 10 years. And it's a collaboration between Kunsthalle Wien and the two art universities of Vienna, namely the University of Applied Arts and the Academy of Fine Arts. And the last three editions used to be group exhibitions, but this year, it's the first time where we've actually gone back to an earlier model of just two winners having a shared, we call it a duo solo exhibition because they share the space, but it's definitely two separate practices that are together in one room. So I wanted to start by maybe giving a little introduction, a little artist bio for both artists before going into deeper questions about their work. Rawan Almukhtar studied art and intervention concept at the Academy of Fine Arts in Vienna. Born and raised in Iraq, he had already received a Bachelor's of Fine Art in Painting at the University of Baghdad before he fled to Austria as a political refugee in 2015. The works exhibited for the Kunsthalle Wien Preis span his time in both places, starting with his series The Witnessing Archive from 2010 and ending with his new painting Transcending Gaze, which he painted this year in 2025. The latter is the newest addition to his Hijra Deframing Post-Migration series. Meaning migration in Arabic, Rawan started painting these works in an attempt to capture his experiences of forced migration and to bring nuance to our limited understanding of such journeys. Through these works, as well as several others in the exhibition, Rawan brings to light some of the broadest socio-political issues of our time, always through his compassionate lens. I interpret his practice overall as a deeply personal retelling of the consequences of seismic socio-political events that nevertheless often get buried in mainstream Western media. More on this later. Ida Kammerloch is likewise presenting a cycle of work for the Kunsthalle Wien Preis that uses her personal family history to make observations about broader social, political, and financial structures. Born in Russia, she moved to Germany as a young child, living in different parts of Europe before receiving a master's in TransArts from the University of Applied Arts in Vienna. Working mainly with video and installation, Ida's works in the exhibition can be traced back to a singular source of inspiration, namely an archive of homemade videos that her grandfather, Vladimir Allen, made in post-Soviet Russia in the 1990s. Comprising of over 400 hours of footage, the videos led Ida's curiosity down various paths that have so far resulted in at least 3 video works and an installation. Her diploma, Ultra All-Inclusive, made in 2024, here shares a space with her newest video essay, Made in China, from 2025, as works that are intrinsically connected but at the same time distinct in their focus. The latter is an ambitious project that only someone as organized as Ida could have achieved in the short time frame of preparing for this exhibition, as it was recorded, edited, and post-produced over the last few months while she was on a residency in Paris and installing this show. So this is actually our first time where we kind of have a chance to sit together, which we'll go into a bit later about the process for actually how we work together for this exhibition. As I mentioned, their practices are very distinct, but the feedback I've at least received so far at the exhibition opening was that there are very nice connections between both of their bodies of work. So what a great chance for us to get into it tonight. I wanted to start with the first question of both of your oldest works in the exhibition have your observations at the center of it. and they particularly play with this idea of your subjective memories versus your objective observations. And Ida, I wanted to talk about your earliest work in the exhibition too. Aren't You Afraid to Swing on Russian Swings? Because there's also a bit of time, yes, exactly, between the images on screen and then you looking back at them, correct?
Yes, thanks, Hannah. Yeah, I'm sorry, today is not my most social day. That's why I have some things that I had to look up, so I hope that's fine for you. So yeah, my oldest work, like so-called oldest work, is like from 2021, is an ongoing documentary that you can like see here called Aren't You Afraid to Swing on Russian Swings? Which is based on my grandfather's home and travel video archive from the 90s and 2000s, as Hannah already said. And kind of guided by his commentary, you get a glimpse into my family's life after the dissolution of the Soviet Union, and a sort of like recalibration or societal political recalibration process that was happening back then, that was shaping my family's kind of life in unexpected ways, meaning that my grandparents, like in like the beginning 90s, turned into shuttle traders, which was a mass phenomenon throughout that time. For 1 decade, traveling to China like around 33 times to buy toys, plush toys, and counterfeit clothing to then sell on the streets. They had like a market stand, and where before engineers like had other jobs and had like academic titles, and all of a sudden like next to a lot of other people that weren't used to trade, weren't used to making business, or like the concept of money itself, had this stand. So in a way, it is kind of like an archive of, a personal archive that shows the unlearning of a socialist way of living by meeting kind of like these, or navigating these new capitalist constraints. And for me, this work is both like a personal reflection of family memory, in a way of looking at political upheaval, but also how history kind of inscribes itself into like the everyday, kind of like into new habits, into new views, into new music tastes, into the wardrobe, into desires, and all of this. And interestingly, the title for it, Aren't You Afraid to Swing on Russian Swings, stems from this scene where my grandfather puts me on a swing and asks, like, in this like a very old, super precariously bent Soviet swing, and he pushes me, and then he asks me, but while holding the camera, aren't you afraid to swing on Russian swings? Which is like a very weird question to like end a scene to put a child into. And then this became kind of like the title for this whole process of working around the archive and and looking back at it, like working for 4 years now with this footage, as Hannah already said, like 400 hours of material. It has so many kind of like layers to it, like economic instability, these societal transformations, and also kind of like the ongoing Russian war in Ukraine, which is also kind of almost echoing, like an echo that is part of this question that he asked me in 1996. And yes, so I kind of like, I used my grandfather's kind of like memories and the newer works, breaking away from them, creating kind of like my own observations to kind of merge the past and the present. So yeah.
I was going to say, on the subject of the title of that work, it's a question that your grandfather is asking you as a child with his kind of knowledge of what is happening in Russia at the time. We've spoken a lot about kind of the role of voices in this work and how he's a very, very strong personality in Russian swings. How did you kind of reconcile his voice with your voice as an artist looking back at this archive years and years after?
It was a real challenge and a real struggle. Everyone that kind of like looked at the material and knows that he's very vocal, he's very present, he's an entertainer, and saying that also, like me growing up away from my grandparents, like I migrated like to Germany with my parents when I was 2 years old, and since then kind of like we were the Germans to them, to my grandparents. So that's how they would call us behind our back. And I also was hearing it and I was like, that's so weird, like to call us the Germans. So that means kind of like working with it, like also being, growing up in the West and now kind of like claiming his archive and these video messages that he would send us to kind of like show daily life and kind of like be in contact across borders. It's kind of like, it's kind of like a interesting kind of like shift or kind of an interesting perspective that I think family was not really ready for it. I think we started out working on it and they were like, yeah, it's no big deal. Everybody was used to being always videotaped all the time. So everybody was like, yeah, take your videos, take your test shots, let's have some interviews. And then when they realized it goes places and it's like really a practice of mine that I'm continuously kind of following, they were like, okay. They got very nervous about that. And and considering that voice, I would say that it was hard for me to find my own voice, but in the last year working and traveling on my own, kind of like, and breaking away from the archive, but also incorporating the archive in my practice, was like really helping me to find that voice, I think.
It's kind of interesting you're talking about being the German because it brings me quite nicely onto your ultra all-inclusive video essay where you're this undercover vacationer in a fake Kremlin luxury resort. Maybe you want to tell me more about that work.
Yeah, it's this is the work, my diploma work, which is like a video essay that is mounted to this huge world, and it is a video essay and also kind of like a real important shift in my practice regarding that archive. Because, as I said, it was like I was like, almost like living on a pile of fragmented memory that was just partially mine, and it was really overwhelming to just do nothing else than just sort the archive. So, like traveling to Turkey, to Antalya, to a hotel, which is the replica of the Kremlin, called Kremlin Palace Hotel, which is a 5-star hotel, was kind of like a really, a weird experience, but also kind of like liberating in a way where it was just my observations that I could then kind of like reconnect to the archive, and I was more in charge of like the pace and the way of editing it. So regarding that. But about the work, you also asked about the work, no? Mm-hmm. So in the video, you can see me like as a sort of, I call myself an undercover vacationer. I call myself undercover vacationer because I'm not there for like relaxation. I'm not there to kind of like hang out at the pool at the Kremlin Palace, but also to observe and to kind of disguise as a tourist, to explore the site. And my main mission in the video was like to fly a drone over the Kremlin, the fake Kremlin. And I accomplished that. It took a while, but I accomplished that. And with that, it had just like a lot of like, for me, it was just like, had a lot of symbolic weight to do that because, of course, it is a sort of subversive fantasy or some kind of like, resistance in a fake parallel world where that went unnoticed. Nobody noticed me doing that. It was not a big deal, but at the same time, yeah, it's part of this film. And I was interested in this like tipping point of this like political structure of this term of terror that the Kremlin is in the real world, and by surrounding it with pools and palm trees and massages and towels and all these concepts around wellness, it became this wellness apparatus, which is which was very interesting to me. So I explored that. Yeah.
Were there actually official rules in the hotel about flying drones, or was it just for you mentally because it's a fake Kremlin? And
no, there were rules, and I had to get in touch with the police to be able to do it. And I also, for this 1 or 2 minute video snippet that I used there, I engaged like a drone pilot and paid €650 for it. Yeah, it's just crazy because it was very complicated to find someone. It was not easy, to navigate that.
And you produced and made a new video work for this exhibition, made in China. I wanted to talk to you a bit about the medium of film and why you use it to tell your stories. And maybe you want to talk a bit about what particular story Made in China is saying to start with.
Made in China follows kind of like a similar pattern as like Ultra All Inclusive. So it's me traveling, me checking into a hotel, me exploring the site and documenting it all. But, and also it is about these architectural outgrowths somewhere like that represent Russia but are not in Russia. So this time it was in Manjuli. It is a city located near the Russian-Chinese border in the Inner Mongolia. And that's the exact city that my grandfather used to travel when I was telling you that he traveled 33 times to China and bought stuff. So that's the city he frequently went in the 90s, and he documented also that city. So there's a huge film that is like 4 hours long called Travel to China, that documents the whole process around shuttle trade and about his his time there. So so in October 2024, I went there, and I went, but I realized that the city he knew or the city he documented doesn't exist anymore. So it's like 30 years later, and the city or that archive got rewritten, and this was kind of like in a way really liberating, because it was now again my own observations and everything was new, and it was not like I wasn't searching. I was like following his footsteps but not searching the same places because they no longer existed. But also was kind of like a shocking experience to me, because realizing that that this Russian-Chinese friendship is just like the kind of like the theme of the whole city. It was kind of like, really, really crazy. It was like replicas, museums dedicated to Russian art, and like hotels in the form of huge matryoshkas and all of these kinds of things that I was then exploring in the film, and sort of like a cultural exchange on acid or something like this. It felt like that. That's why I'm referring to it as a theme park aesthetic. So yes, and it's like, do you also ask about medium and about this? Yeah, it's my first 3-channel video installation, and for me it was very important to kind of like amplify also like this immersiveness of this experience through this to this 3-channel video installation, but also to sound. And that's why I collaborated with Paul Eppert sound artist from Vienna. To enhance that. And of course, it's a very difficult space to show video because it's the sound gets reflected on glass walls, and we have no carpet, and we have So it's tricky, but I think we managed. And so
I think your new work also ties nicely into the first work in this exhibition, Membrane of the New, because it's looking, I think you have this fascination with material stuff, objects and architecture in the case of in case of Made in China. But in Membrane of the New, it's also like objects that are repeated throughout the exhibition that you then play with by blowing them up and things in your Alu Dibon works. Do you want to talk about how all these material things tie everything together?
Yeah, it's crazy. It's like either a matrix or a psychosis. I don't know, but I mean, it's really like everything is interconnected. Like as also the work there, I found through like the place there. I found through research by the place there and this and that, and everything's kind of interconnected. And like when I first broke away from the archive, working with this. All this footage and my eyes or my brain was VHSified really for a long time, and I was like, now I want to do something else and find a new way of like a new working method. I decided to go into the dark room and use these packages from like toys to then develop photograms with them. And so you can also see the world also featured in the shop as a photogram, for example.
This big.
So it's that big, 7 centimeters. So yeah, and so it's like kind of like interconnected with each other, because it's like, talking about, in this case also kind of like about environmental issues or costs, but also about global trade and about crossing borders, and like about also the archive also, and all these kinds of things. Yeah.
And maybe you want to talk about the world, specifically this little souvenir that you've blown up to gigantic proportions for Ultra All Inclusive, because how you found this souvenir was quite interesting. Yeah,
in the film you can see that at the hotel there is like all of a sudden like a market in one of the ballrooms, and they sell like a lot of toys and like plastics, and it's like it is a souvenir from the Kremlin Palace hotel. So I found it there, bought it, photographed it, and then it became kind of like the facade for the film, which is just like a little plastic toy, 7 centimeters big, that is like a water toy where you normally there's water in and you can push the buttons, but yeah, like a turquoise bubble or something like this, and I lost my point.
But it's kind of interesting you found like this kind of knick-knack so long, the kind of knick-knack your granddad would buy.
Yes.
In contemporary times.
Yes, for sure. Yeah, this, and it is then again a souvenir, which also in other works it deals with souvenirs, because the hotel that I was living in, for example, was this huge matryoshka doll, which is also just a souvenir, and so it's kind of like full circle of the moment.
And I wondered if you could also mention kind of the significance of these kind of kitschy toys from the 90s in Russia, because it has a very specific kind of meaning behind it that we might not necessarily understand like in Western Europe.
Yeah, I mean, that it is definitely kind of like tied to my childhood or my memories, you know, like spending time at the market stand with my grandparents, because all I wanted is just these plastic toys, you know, and they had some at their stand, or I was buying some, and at the same time, it's like these plastic toys, it's kind of like, yeah, very like, yeah, as you said, knick-knack or kitsch or like very childish stuff, but they're also tied to completely new consumerism and to also the dissolution of the Soviet Union and the flooding of the markets and the homes with like new objects that are like kind of Western, which was a completely, a different relationship than it was for us, that, you know, there were trends and things came and it's normal and we kind of have the ability to buy them and we know about them and all of this. It's different if you were cut off all of these things and all of a sudden they come in the craziest colors and it's plastic and it's wow, whatever, and it's cheap. It is kind of like this, so it has this kind of political dimension to it, yeah.
My closing remarks would be like, even though this space is really difficult to curate because we have a video practice in a glass box, it's actually quite nice to show these two practices in a space that's much calmer compared to our Museums Quartier location. We have pay-as-you-wish hours every Thursday after 5 p.m., which means technically free. And I would recommend, whenever you have the time of coming back, we're open 5 p.m. to 8 p.m. on Thursdays, and really taking your time to look at the works, maybe reading the handout, because that's how you kind of get the most out of them. We also have a publication about the exhibition that includes an interview with Rawan and Ida, as well as beautifully written text about their work by Alicia Melzaka and Regine Sahakian, which is available in our shop. And our next opening at Kunsthalle will be the Radical Software exhibition, which opens 27th of February. We also have a symposium the following day on the Radical Software exhibition. So stick around to talk to the artists after this talk, but also hopefully see you again soon another time, and have a lovely evening. Thank you.